If you're one of the many Americans swapping out real sugar for artificial sweeteners, I feel for you. In this video, I'm going to talk all about the good, the bad, the ugly of artificial sweeteners. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to the Holistic Nootropics YouTube channel. My name's Eric, and on this channel we talk about using nootropics, biohacking, and nutrition to help you boost your cognition. If you're new here, then please consider subscribing, especially if you enjoy the video. Please leave it a big thumbs up. And if you are interested in finding the best quality supplements or nootropics, then head on over to holisticnootropics.com and download a free copy of my supplement buying guide. This is a fully comprehensive guide that walks you through the specific ingredients to look out for to make sure that you buy only the best quality products on the market. And if you have any comments or questions that you think of throughout the video, leave those down in the comments below and I'll do my best to respond to all those. So let's discuss artificial sweeteners. The reason I'm doing this video is because I see a lot of back and forth online between these different nutrition camps on the benefits or the hazards of artificial sweeteners. Now, I'm not here to tell you whether you should or should not use them. I, of course, do believe that they have their place in the food system. Of course, sugar has its negative aspects and you should do everything you can to replace it, and that's what these artificial sweeteners do. But I can tell you from personal experience, having largely cut out all artificial sweeteners from my diet, especially the more harmful ones, I have noticed beneficial brain and physiological benefits. That's also because I try my best to stay away from things like processed food, where you're gonna find a lot of these artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners are ubiquitous in the food system. You find them in a lot of prepackaged, processed sweet foods, things like sodas, fruit juices, cakes, jellies, snacks, and candies. But they're not just in sweet foods. You find them in a lot of savory packaged foods too, things like whole wheat bread, ketchup, salad dressings, yogurt, granola, popcorn, and cereals. But that's fine as long as it's not sugar, right? Well, actually, when you dig into the data, you find with a lot of these non-sugar substitute sweeteners, a lot of red flags. Now, what do I mean when I say artificial sweeteners? Well, according to the USDA, there are two classes of sweeteners. You have nutritive and non-nutritive sweeteners. Nutritive sweeteners are sweeteners that actually provide energy to the body in the form of carbohydrates. So examples of this are things like sugar, honey, fructose, and molasses. Non-nutritive or zero-calorie sweeteners are sweeteners that provide zero measurable nutritional benefit to your body. That's because they're not actually absorbed by your digestive system, yet they provide hundreds of times more sweetness than your average table sugar. In this video, I'm focusing mostly on the non-nutritive sweeteners because they are so devious, and quite frankly, I can't watch another person drink a Diet Coke or sweeten their coffee with Splenda and think they're doing something beneficial for their health. What makes non-nutritive sweeteners so appealing is the fact that they are zero calorie. And for so long in the American health system, we've been told that your health depends on the amount of calories you take in. And if you take in less calories, then you're going to have better health and you're going to lose weight, especially if you can avoid sugar. But there's so much more to the story, which includes real health consequences that come with long-term consistent use of these artificial sweeteners. So if you're someone who's trying to lose weight, I totally get the appeal of these different non-nutritive artificial sweeteners. But the problem for most people dealing with weight issues are the actual sweet cravings themselves. Otherwise, why would you consume sugar, or why would you consume these artificial sweeteners? But what does the evidence say? Well, one example, in this randomized controlled trial, use of saccharin was as ineffective at weight management as compared to table sugar. And in a study measuring glycemic control using diet sodas and artificial sweeteners, the group that consumed more of these artificial sweeteners actually experienced higher diabetic symptoms like HbA1c, obesity, and retinopathy. And the research also shows us that these artificial sweeteners don't even do a good job of promoting things like satiety or fullness or reward after eating. And when it comes to weight loss, that's one of the most important factors. Are you satiated after eating? because if you're not, you're gonna eat a lot more. It is important to note that in one randomized trial of artificial sweeteners, aspartame and sucralose, unlike saccharin, did show effectiveness at weight loss. But even more important to note is that one of this study's authors, Richard D. Mattis, is deep in the food industry. This guy, Richard D. Mattis, receives money from Welch's Food, ConAgra, and the Grain Food Association. These are all businesses that support foods made with aspartame and sucralose. And this highlights one of the biggest problems when trying to parse out the data on artificial sweeteners, which is so much of the research is funded by the food industry and conducted by people who have received funding by players in the food industry. And essentially what this does is creates a lot of junk science and really poisons the well when it comes to finding good information on this topic. Like, for instance, this recent study showing that aspartame and sucralose have no impact on the gut that was co-authored by a gentleman who's received money from PepsiCo, which, as you could imagine, has a favorable view of artificial sweeteners. This is important because real studies on aspartame and sucralose show that these sweeteners do have a detrimental effect on your gut. Like, for instance, this study demonstrates that these artificial sweeteners, saccharin, sucralose, and aspartame, can disrupt gut homeostasis by attacking the epithelial lining of the gut. It also shows that these sweeteners promote biofilm formation within the bacterial colonies, which makes these bacteria more virulent and endotoxic. And the result of this is you get more harmful strains like, for instance, E. coli. This study also shows that these sweeteners can increase biofilm formation amongst these bacterial colonies, making the bacteria more virulent and endotoxic, and increases the harmful strength of common bacterial strains like E. coli. Now, it's fair to criticize this one study as being inconclusive due to its in vitro nature. On the other hand, you could look at this study and understand that it only measured a single dose of these artificial sweeteners over the course of 24 hours. In reality, most people who do consume these artificial sweeteners are consuming them all throughout the day on a daily basis. Another study in animals and in vitro cultures demonstrated aspartame, sucralose, and saccharin's ability to severely disrupt the tight junctions in the gut by causing oxidative stress and apoptosis in the endothelial cell lining of the gut wall. This disruption of the gut wall is going to ultimately lead to something called leaky gut, which then has its own whole host of detrimental health effects, not least of which include things like autoimmunity, immune issues, and neurological disorders. Ultimately, these studies demonstrating the detrimental effects of artificial sweeteners on your gut are also elucidating ties between the artificial sweeteners and metabolic dysfunction, because we are starting to understand the intricate link between gut health and metabolic function. In fact, there has been quite a bit written between artificial sweeteners' detrimental effects on gut health and that specific ties to things like insulin resistance and blood glucose dysregulation. This is also important because there are sweet taste receptors in the gut that do respond to artificial sweeteners and help initiate many of the same hormonal responses that you get when you consume regular sugar. So gut health is one of the most important factors when it comes to understanding the detrimental effect of artificial sweeteners. But I will say, not all artificial sweeteners are created equal. There are some that are actually good for your gut and not bad, like aspartame, sucralose, or saccharin. For instance, xylitol has shown an ability in mice to promote good gut bacteria while limiting the proliferation of harmful gut bacteria. But on the other hand, stevia, which is a popular sweetener amongst the paleo and keto and low carb crowd, does show a decrease in lactobacillus reuteri in the gut, which is an important probiotic. And there is also evidence that directly ties use of artificial sweeteners to metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. But although we've seen this play out in the data, researchers don't still understand the exact mechanisms of how artificial sweeteners do induce these metabolic dysfunctions. Researchers have noted that acute exposure of artificial sweeteners on the endocrine pancreas can cause hyperglycemia and stimulate insulin secretion, but does not explain the biological mechanisms that are dysregulated when diabetes and metabolic syndrome develop during chronic exposure to non-nutritive sweeteners. Another example of this is how many people who do regularly consume artificial sweeteners do have type 2 diabetes and are obese. But then you run into this kind of chicken and egg situation, which is that obesity is also a major risk factor for type 2 diabetes. So which direction does this correlation run? And I'm really only bringing this up because the idea that artificial sweeteners cause a similar glycemic response as sugar is something that gets floated around in the wellness community, and I don't know if people really understand the full extent of what they're talking about. But while that might not be 100% correct, the fact is that when you do combine something like sucralose with carbohydrates, you do see that a lot of the insulin sensitivity in the body is decreased. And that's important because sucralose, saccharin, and aspartame are usually consumed in the context of being alongside carbohydrates. Things like fruit juices, breads, baked goods, jams, sauces, and snack foods all contain these artificial sweeteners and all contain carbohydrates. Now, another very important point to keep in mind is that while the sweeteners are listed on nutrition facts labels under the other ingredients, unlike the macronutrients in the nutrition facts part, artificial sweeteners are not tallied by their amounts. So you never know how much of a specific sweetener you're getting. So maybe in small doses, one of these sweeteners like aspartame or sucralose might not be that bad. But as the saying goes, the dose makes the poison. And if you don't know how much of that dose you're getting, you may be consuming poison. Perfect example, artificial sweeteners are not good for pregnant women. At the end of the day, this topic is very far from settled, and you can feel however you want about artificial sweeteners and their benefits or their harms, but the fact is that so much of the research is tainted and so many special interest groups have their hands on the research that it really makes understanding the research that much more difficult. But I'd love to know what you think. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this topic of artificial sweeteners, because I know there are a lot of different opinions and I would love to know what you, the viewer, think of this. Otherwise, if you're new here to the channel, remember to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and share it with all your friends who you think would need to hear this information. And for more on all things nootropics and supplementation and biohacking and nutrition, go on over to holisticnootropics.com. Until next time, have a great day. Peace.